My name is Mia Bennett. I am 35 years old, and by the time my sister raised her champagne glass at Christmas dinner, I already knew she was going to turn me into the evening's entertainment. "You're already 35 and still single?" she said, loud enough for every cousin, spouse, and family friend at the table to hear. "Must be tough spending Christmas alone." The laughter came quickly. My mother laughed too, then waved one hand as though humiliation disappeared when labeled harmless. "She's just joking." I set my glass down. "Don't worry about me," I said. "I've been married for a long time." My mother froze mid-toast. My sister's smile collapsed. My father stared at me as if he had missed an entire chapter of his own family. Someone asked who my husband was. I looked at the glossy redevelopment proposal beside my mother's plate, the one my family had spent 6 months preparing for a private investor they believed could save their failing business. "You already know his name," I said. "You've been begging for a meeting with him since June." No one laughed then. My sister reached for the proposal, but I placed my hand on it first. There was something else they did not know. The document contained my work, my credentials, and a signature I had never authorized. By the end of that night, my family would learn who I had married, why I had kept it from them, and what their favorite daughter had risked to make herself look successful. Before I tell you what my husband said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. My family owned Bennett and Rowe Heritage Works, a 3-generation St. Louis company that restored theaters, libraries, railway halls, and civic buildings. By that Christmas, the business still looked prestigious from the outside, but behind the polished photographs were overdue invoices, expensive loans, and a leadership team that preferred appearances to difficult facts. My father, Richard Bennett, understood historic construction but avoided confrontation. My mother, Elaine, ran client relations and treated every family problem like a public relations issue. My older sister, Vanessa Bennett Hale, was creative director, the golden child who could turn charm into authority even when someone else had done the work. I had grown up as the dependable daughter who checked the numbers, solved emergencies, and was forgotten again when the crisis ended. I never joined the family company. I became an architectural acoustics consultant, the specialist design teams hire when a concert hall looks beautiful but sounds terrible, a courtroom carries whispers across 40 feet, or a restored station turns every announcement into an echo. My work combined mathematics, materials science, field testing, and long nights inside empty buildings listening for flaws no one else could hear. My mother called it sound decorating. Vanessa told people I adjusted speakers. They mocked the profession until they needed my contacts, my reports, or an introduction to a theater board. When I helped, Vanessa described me publicly as someone supporting her vision. When I declined unpaid work, my mother reminded me that family loyalty should not come with conditions. I met Grant Mercer 3 years earlier during the rehabilitation of the Marlowe Radio Theater, an abandoned 1930s broadcast house in Kansas City. Grant was a structural engineer and founder of Mercer Civic Renewal, a redevelopment firm known for saving difficult public projects. Our first conversation was an argument about whether the original plaster ceiling could survive the acoustic plan. He returned the next morning with revised calculations and coffee. I returned with a test model proving both of us had been partly wrong. That became our rhythm. Challenge, evidence, adjustment, respect. I told my family almost nothing about him because they treated private information like shared property. Vanessa had once read messages on my unlocked phone and repeated details of a breakup at Thanksgiving. My mother defended her with the same words she used at Christmas. She was just joking. Another time, Mom invited a man I was dating to a fundraiser without asking me, seated him beside a donor's daughter, and spent the evening praising how well matched they looked. When I objected, I was called sensitive. Those moments taught me that people who mock boundaries are usually the first to resent them once they become real. Grant understood. He also kept his home life separate from business after a former partner weaponized personal gossip during a municipal deal. We dated quietly, cooked late dinners after site visits, and spent Sunday mornings walking through salvage warehouses. He met my closest friend, Tessa Monroe, and I met his sister, Claire Mercer. No one demanded a performance from us. 18 months before that Christmas, we married in the reading room of a small municipal archive he had helped preserve. There were 11 guests, lemon cake from a neighborhood bakery, and no family politics. I wore my ring on a chain during field inspections because metal jewelry was unsafe around some equipment. Over time, the chain became a habit, and my family never noticed. I had considered telling them. Each attempt died beneath another joke about women marrying late, another demand for free work, or another reminder that Vanessa's milestones mattered more than mine. Grant never pressured me. "Tell them when disclosure feels safer than silence," he said. By Christmas, disclosure did not feel safe. It felt necessary, because Bennett and Rowe had begun pursuing the Orpheum Exchange, a freight terminal scheduled to become a market, rehearsal complex, and vocational campus. Mercer Civic was the only serious investor still considering the project. My family did not know Grant was my husband. They also did not know I had already seen their proposal, and recognized entire pages of my confidential analysis inside it. After my announcement, the room stayed silent long enough for me to hear ice shifting inside someone's glass. A cousin near the end of the table slowly lowered his phone, probably realizing the family joke he had been recording had just become something else entirely. My sister recovered first. "Very dramatic, Mia," she said, forcing out a laugh that no one joined. "Who is he?" My mother lowered her champagne but remained frozen in the middle of her toast. My father looked from me to the gold lettering on the redevelopment proposal beside his plate. "Mercer Civic Renewal, Orpheum Exchange Partnership Review." "Grant Mercer," I said. "We were married 18 months ago." Colin stopped chewing. My sister's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "That's impossible." I unlocked my phone, found the wedding photograph I kept in a private album, and placed it in the center of the table. Grant and I stood inside the reading room of a restored municipal archive, sunlight crossing the old oak floor behind us. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie. I wore a simple ivory dress and the expression of someone who had finally made a choice without waiting for her family to approve it. 11 people had been there. None of them shared my last name. My father picked up the phone carefully, as if the image might disappear if he touched it too quickly. My mother leaned closer, her face moving through disbelief, hurt, calculation, and finally recognition. My sister barely looked at the photograph. Her eyes went straight to the proposal beneath my hand. "Does he know about the Orpheum project?" she asked. Not, "Are you happy?" Not, "Why didn't you tell us?" The first question out of her mouth was about the deal. "He knows exactly what your company submitted," I said. "What have you told him about us?" "That should worry you less than what you told him about me." I opened the proposal to page 14. The acoustic feasibility summary was mine. So were the reverberation projections, the vibration control diagrams, the seating absorption model, and the materials schedule designed for the terminal's proposed performance hall. I had prepared the original report 2 years earlier for a nonprofit arts coalition that had considered leasing part of the building. The project died when a grant fell through, but the research remained protected under my consultancy agreement. Every page had been marked confidential. I had shared a preliminary copy with my father after he asked whether the building could realistically support live performances without a complete interior rebuild. He had promised he only wanted to understand the technical risks. Now my work had been transferred into Bennett and Rowe's investor package, with the copyright footer removed. My name appeared beneath a heading that read, Senior Technical Partnership, followed by a statement claiming I had agreed to serve as the company's lead acoustics advisor for the entire redevelopment. I had never agreed to anything. Beneath that statement was a digital signature that looked enough like mine to fool someone moving quickly through hundreds of pages. My father pulled the proposal toward him. "Elaine, what is this?" My mother did not answer him. She looked directly at my sister. Colin wiped his mouth and said he had been assured I had reviewed and approved the package. "It was a working draft," my sister said. "Nothing was final." "You submitted it to an investment committee," I replied. "That makes it more than a draft." "Mia has helped the company before," she told the table, as though past generosity gave her permanent access to my name. "She has sent us recommendations, reviewed materials, introduced people. We had every reason to believe she would support this. Helping you before is not lifelong consent, and support is not a signature." My mother reached across the table, but I moved the proposal away from her hand. "Whatever happened, we can correct it privately," she said. "There is no reason your husband should make a multi-million-dollar decision based on a disagreement between sisters." Her hypocrisy was almost elegant. Less than 5 minutes earlier, she had laughed when I was described as a lonely 35-year-old woman. Now my real marriage had become a corporate asset I had selfishly failed to disclose. "Grant is not withdrawing because I am upset," I said. Mercer Civic's compliance team discovered inconsistencies before anyone knew I was connected to him personally. My father frowned. "What inconsistencies?" "Revenue projections that do not match your tax filings. Letters of subcontractor commitment from firms that deny issuing them. A financing statement that lists personal guarantors who have not agreed to guarantee anything. And my unauthorized signature." Colin's face changed when I mentioned the guarantors. He asked which names were listed. My sister told him this was neither the time nor the place. "Apparently, Christmas dinner is the place to discuss Mia's marriage, but not the documents attached to our house," he said. My mother whispered his name in warning. I continued. "I learned about the proposal when Mercer Civic's general counsel contacted my office to verify my role. They did not know I was Grant's wife. They knew I was the consultant whose copyrighted work appeared in a submission from a company claiming I had joined its technical team." My sister pushed back her chair. "So you discussed our confidential finances with your husband behind our backs?" "No, your company placed my identity inside its confidential finances without my permission." My phone vibrated against the table. Grant was calling because he knew I planned to confront them and had asked me to text when I was safe. I answered. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. "They know we're married. They also know about the proposal." My mother immediately adopted the polished voice she used with donors and city officials. "Grant, this is Elaine Bennett. I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding." I looked at the phone. Grant heard the unspoken question in my silence and said, "Put me on speaker." I did. "Mr. Mercer," my mother began, "Vanessa may have moved too quickly, but Mia has contributed informally to our company for years. There was no intention to mislead anyone. A written representation was supported by false documentation," Grant replied evenly. "That is not an informal contribution, and it is not a misunderstanding." My sister leaned toward the phone. Mia has complicated feelings about the family business. I respect her expertise, but she is not objective where I am concerned. My wife's feelings did not create the discrepancies in your submission, Grant said. Her professional integrity is the reason one of them was identified before it created greater legal exposure for everyone involved. The word wife landed harder than the wedding photograph. It made our marriage real in a way my family could not dismiss as another performance. My mother closed her eyes briefly. My father looked down at my ringless hand, then noticed the thin chain beneath my collar. My sister's face hardened. Are you saying Mercer Civic is rejecting the proposal? Our investment committee will issue formal notice after the holiday. Until then, neither Bennett and Rowe nor any representative acting on its behalf may use Mia's name, reports, credentials, diagrams, or implied participation. Preserve all drafts and communications related to the submission. Further questions should go through counsel. Grant, my mother said quickly, before you make a decision that could affect dozens of employees, perhaps we could arrange a private family meeting. The employees are precisely why the decision must be handled through proper review instead of family pressure, he answered. Mia, call me when you leave. I ended the call. No one spoke for several seconds. My mother stared at me as though I had personally placed every false number in the proposal. Mia, she finally said, lowering her voice, you have to fix this. Not I am sorry. Not, how could this have happened? Not, we should never have laughed at you. Her instinct was the same as it had always been. Vanessa created the emergency, and I was expected to become the solution. I stood and reached for my coat. No, I said. For once, the person who created the problem will have to carry it. My sister rose too. You cannot walk in here, reveal a secret husband, threaten the company, and leave like you are innocent. I turned toward her. I did not bring Grant's name into your proposal. You did. I did not attach my signature to a lie. You did. And I did not make my marriage a weapon tonight. You made my supposed loneliness into entertainment, and the truth happened to answer you. The room had gone so quiet that even the people who had laughed avoided looking at me. I opened the front door, but before stepping outside, I looked back at my mother. You told me she was just joking. Maybe tomorrow you can explain which part was funny. My mother followed me into the entry hall. You cannot leave after dropping something like this. Your sister made a mistake. Families solve mistakes. Families also prevent them, I replied. They do not laugh while one daughter humiliates another, then demand loyalty when money is involved. This is about the joke? The joke was only the clearest summary. For years, Vanessa's cruelty had been treated as a personality trait the rest of us were responsible for managing. When she borrowed my belongings, I was told not to be possessive. When she repeated private details, I was told not to be secretive. When she introduced my contacts as people she had cultivated, I was told not to compete with my sister. Every boundary I set proved I was cold. Every boundary she crossed proved she was outgoing. The worst incident happened 5 years earlier, when I redesigned the acoustics for a children's theater beneath an elevated train line. I developed a floating interior shell that reduced low-frequency vibration without forcing the nonprofit to abandon the building. Vanessa saw my presentation during a family weekend. 3 months later, Bennett and Rowe entered an awards competition using my diagrams as evidence of its innovative methodology. My logo was removed, and her team received the credit. I discovered it when the awards committee invited me to serve as a juror. My mother begged me not to report the submission because public embarrassment could cost employees their jobs. My father promised it would be withdrawn. Vanessa cried, called the images placeholders, and accused me of enjoying her humiliation. I agreed not to file a formal complaint. 2 weeks later, Mom told relatives I had nearly destroyed the company over a formatting error. That was when I stopped confusing peace with repair. Grant knew that history before we married. He had watched Vanessa send me a 40-page bid package at midnight with the message, "You're the genius. Make this credible by morning." He never told me to cut them off. He asked, "What would contact look like if guilt were not making the rules?" The answer was limited information, written agreements, and no access to my marriage until they could respect it. I did not hide Grant because he was important. I hid us because our relationship was the first part of my life they had never been allowed to rename, compare, market, or borrow. My mother crossed her arms. "You excluded us from your wedding." "Yes." The direct answer startled her. I invited people who could be happy for me without turning the day into a competition, a client list, or a family negotiation. Behind the door, Vanessa blamed Colin for approving the proposal. Colin insisted he had relied on her assurances. My father asked them to stop. Mom lowered her voice. "Mercer Civic was our last option. The bank has given us until January 15th to show new capital. If this deal disappears, we may lose the project and the showroom." For half a second, old training took over. I imagined reviewing the debt, calling Grant, and building a rescue plan. That was the role they preferred for me, invisible until competence became necessary. "Did Vanessa know the deadline when she signed my name?" I asked. My mother looked away. The door opened. My father stepped into the hall with a manila folder containing lender notices, payroll warnings, and a draft list of personal guarantors. My name was included as a family principal with substantial outside income, even though I had never owned part of Bennett and Rowe. A note beside it read, "MIA will come around once Grant is committed." That was only planning, my mother said. My father pulled the folder away. "Elaine, stop." Then he looked at me. "I did not approve this. I should have known. I should have asked." Vanessa appeared in the doorway. "What do you want, Mia? My resignation? Do you want me to kneel?" "I want you to stop asking what performance will make consequences disappear." She laughed bitterly. "You finally have the powerful husband and perfect career. You get to stand above everyone." There it was, the resentment beneath years of jokes. Not concern that I was alone, fear that I was not. "I never needed to stand above you," I said. "I needed you to stop standing on me." Grant was waiting across the street because we had agreed I should not drive if the confrontation became overwhelming. I climbed into his truck and handed him the folder. "How bad?" he asked. "Worse than the proposal." He did not tell me what to do. He touched the ring beneath my collar and waited while I finally allowed myself to shake. 3 days after Christmas, Mercer Civic formally ended negotiations. The letter cited material misrepresentations, unauthorized use of a consultant's credentials, and weak internal financial controls. It did not mention our marriage. Grant insisted the record remain professional so no one could dismiss the decision as domestic revenge. The facts were damaging enough. The city suspended Bennett and Rowe from the Orpheum bid. The bank refused to extend its deadline. Subcontractors demanded overdue payment, and Colin's father hired a lawyer after learning he had invested based on Vanessa's claim that the Mercer deal was essentially complete. My father apologized without asking for anything. My mother sent 14 messages, each ending with a request. Vanessa wrote only, "I hope you are enjoying this." On January 4th, my mother arrived at my office with a binder labeled Family Continuity Plan. It proposed that Grant purchase 49% of Bennett and Rowe, assume part of the debt, and keep Vanessa as president of creative operations. I would join the board, provide technical services for 5 years at a family rate, and publicly call the forged signature an administrative misunderstanding. It was not a rescue plan. It transferred the risk to me and Grant while preserving power for the people who created the crisis. You said you wanted accountability, Mom told me. You can supervise Vanessa from the board. I do not want to supervise her. I want her to be responsible for herself. She is your sister. She is also the executive who submitted false information. Mom's composure cracked. 43 people depend on this company. Your grandfather started it with 2 employees and a borrowed truck. I understood the employee risk better than she realized because I had reviewed the numbers with an independent restructuring attorney. Saving workers did not require preserving Bennett control. There is one structure I would support, I said. Bennett and Rowe enters court-supervised restructuring. The showroom is sold. Employees receive priority for unpaid wages. The restoration division is offered to a qualified buyer or worker cooperative. Dad may remain as a technical advisor. Vanessa resigns from management, issues a factual correction about my work, and repays legal costs tied to the false submission. You and Dad release any claim that I am responsible for family debt. Mercer Civic may bid through an open process, but I will not influence the price. You want to strip our name from our company. I want the people who perform the work to have a chance to keep their jobs. This is punishment. No. Punishment would be using my marriage to destroy you. I am refusing to use it to protect you from documented choices. After she left, I cried alone in the conference room. Doing the right thing did not feel triumphant. It felt like admitting the family I wanted was not the family making demands outside my office. Grant found me there and said Mom had called his office, claiming our marriage made me biased. Counsel preserved the voicemail. Part of me still wants to fix payroll, I admitted. Kindness does not require returning control to the same people, he said. Together, we developed a lawful alternative. Mercer Civic would not rescue Bennett and Rowe, but it would support financing for a regional employee-owned restoration cooperative if the assets were sold transparently. Grant recused himself from the internal vote. I agreed to provide limited paid consulting only if the cooperative won through an open process. No secret leverage, no family discount, no erased consequences. When Vanessa learned, she called. You are giving our company to strangers. The people in that cooperative have completed most of your projects for years. You know what I mean? Yes. They are strangers because they do not share our last name, even though you risked their jobs to protect yours. She began to cry and admitted the Christmas joke had been strategic. She had heard I might be involved with someone important but could not identify him. Calling me single in front of everyone was meant to force a denial or a reveal. You could have asked whether I was happy, I said. I did not think you would tell me. You were right. Then what was I supposed to do? Accept that access to me is not something you can force. She confessed that making me look lonely helped her feel more successful, then asked whether resigning would make the investigation disappear. I told her the City Review and Mercer Notice were based on records, not my mood. She had spent years treating every system like a relationship she could manage. Now evidence was answering her. Before hanging up, Vanessa said, You have no idea what it is like to fail in front of everyone. You made me fail in front of everyone each time you turned my life into a joke, I replied. The difference is that I learned to keep living without making someone else smaller. Bennett and Rowe filed for restructuring on January 12th. My father supported it after discovering that Vanessa and my mother had hidden 2 creditor notices. Mom called him disloyal. He replied that pretending was no longer loyalty. It was the most honest sentence I had ever heard him say. The City Review found that Vanessa had submitted my altered signature from her account and instructed a junior coordinator to remove my copyright footer from 2 diagrams. The coordinator produced emails showing she had questioned the order and was told I had verbally cleared everything. Vanessa was barred from serving as a principal on municipal redevelopment contracts for 3 years. It did not end her career, but it ended the version built on family protection and borrowed credibility. Colin moved out after learning she had also understated personal guarantees connected to the company. I did not celebrate. Their marriage was not my battlefield. Still, the consequence mattered. Vanessa had measured my life by whether a man stood beside me at family dinners. Now appearances could not protect her relationship from concealed debt and repeated dishonesty. My mother told relatives that Grant had engineered a hostile takeover because I held a childhood grudge. That story weakened when Mercer Civic declined to bid on the showroom and supported an employee cooperative instead. Archway Restoration Partners purchased the equipment, active contracts, and vehicles. 36 of 43 employees received offers. The others received priority wage claims and placement assistance. The Bennett and Rowe name was not included. On the morning workers removed the brass letters from the building, my father asked me to meet him across the street. He handed me a signed declaration that I had never been an owner, guarantor, or authorized representative of the company. He also gave me a personal letter apologizing for every time he let Mom and Vanessa turn me into a resource, for pressuring me to overlook the old award submission, and for mistaking silence for innocence. "I do not expect forgiveness on a schedule," he said. I wanted the truth recorded somewhere other than my head. It was the first apology from my family that contained no instruction for me. I hugged him, but I did not say everything was fine. We began meeting monthly for breakfast. He took a paid advisory role with Archway and worked without carrying the family name as authority. My mother stayed silent for 4 months, then came to a lecture where I spoke about acoustic accessibility in public buildings. Afterward, she waited until the room emptied. "I watched you for 40 minutes, she said. "I realized I do not actually know what you do." "You could learn," I replied. She nodded. "I also realized the way we talked about you made it easier not to notice you." That sentence mattered because it placed responsibility on the behavior that made ignorance convenient. She asked to meet Grant as my husband rather than as an investor. I said not yet. She looked hurt, but accepted the answer. Boundaries become real when they survive someone else's disappointment. Vanessa's first genuine apology came later. She sent a correction to the Regional Preservation Association, the city, Archway, my attorney, and every former director. She admitted using my diagrams without permission in both the old award submission and the Orpheum proposal. The language was plain: no misunderstanding, no placeholder, no shared family material. Then she wrote privately, "I kept thinking that if people saw you as lonely, they would stop seeing me as less capable. I was wrong about what that did to you and what it made me. I do not expect you to trust me." I acknowledged the correction through my attorney. An apology can be meaningful without purchasing immediate access. Months later, I agreed to one conversation with Vanessa in a therapist's office. She described taking an ethics course, accepting contract work outside historic development, and confronting how often she had converted envy into entitlement. "Did you hide the marriage because you hated me?" she asked. "No. I hid it because I loved my life enough to protect it." She cried quietly. I did not rescue her from the feeling, and I did not punish her with it. I let the truth remain in the room. Grant and my mother finally met that summer at the reopening of the Marlowe Radio Theater. She apologized for pulling him into family confusion. Grant answered gently, "It was not confusion." Mia was clear. "You did not like the boundary." My mother looked at me, then nodded. "That is true." It was a small admission, but it was one she had been incapable of making at Christmas. 1 year after the Christmas dinner, Grant and I hosted 11 people in the archive reading room where we had married. Tessa brought the same lemon cake, Claire arrived with her sons, and my father spent 20 minutes explaining the building's steel trusses. My mother joined us for dessert after asking whether the invitation included her. It did. Vanessa was not there. We had reached occasional conversations, not holidays, and both of us understood that trust was built through repetition, not declared because a year had passed. Archway Restoration Partners had completed its first profitable quarter. Former Bennett and Rowe craftspeople now owned shares in the company they had sustained for years. My father served as a paid advisor without voting control. The Orpheum contract went elsewhere, but Archway won a smaller library restoration on its own merit. No family name opened that door. Their work did. Vanessa completed the city's ethics requirements and found a job coordinating vendor logistics for a trade show company. The title was less glamorous and the salary lower, but the work was measurable. In therapy, she admitted that starting over embarrassed her until she noticed something unfamiliar. When a project succeeded, she knew exactly which part belonged to her. Colin returned home after months of counseling, though their marriage remained fragile. I did not ask for details. Privacy was not suspicious simply because it belonged to someone else. My mother changed more slowly. When relatives asked why they had not known about my wedding, she first called me secretive. After I corrected her, she began saying, "Mia did not feel safe sharing it with us." Eventually, she added, "We gave her reasons." Accountability was not one dramatic apology. It was telling the truth, even when the old story made you look better. My acoustic accessibility framework became part of a national design guide, and I was chosen to lead the sound strategy for a science museum inside a former aircraft assembly plant. At the launch, an interviewer asked Grant how it felt to be married to someone receiving so much attention. He smiled. "Normal." I was impressed by her before she knew my middle name. Then he stepped aside so the next question came to me. He could stand beside me without standing in front of me. People sometimes ask whether revealing my marriage was revenge. I did not marry Grant to surprise my family. I did not alter my signature, remove copyright marks, hide creditor notices, or force Vanessa to mock me. I told the truth at the exact moment they expected me to absorb another lie about myself. Then I refused to spend my marriage, money, expertise, or reputation shielding them from the consequences of their choices. The family company disappeared, but the employees' work survived. My father lost authority and recovered integrity. My mother lost the social story she protected and began learning how to relate without managing appearances. Vanessa lost status and the certainty that someone else would clean up after her. I lost the fantasy that one perfect explanation could transform people who benefited from misunderstanding me. On the anniversary of that dinner, my mother sent me a message. I laughed because stopping Vanessa would have required me to admit that I encouraged the way she treated you. You deserved a mother who protected your dignity before she needed your help. I am sorry. I thanked her for saying it clearly and told her trust would still take time. It was not a grand reunion. It was a door opened only to the width I chose. That evening, I wore my wedding ring on my hand instead of the chain around my neck. My father noticed first. My mother noticed second and smiled without making a speech. Grant touched my fingers beneath the table. I once believed family peace meant preventing discomfort. Now I know peace built on one person's silence is only convenience for everyone else. Love does not require unlimited access. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. A joke that repeatedly targets the same wound is not humor. It is a test of how much disrespect the room will permit. When I remember my sister asking whether it was hard to spend Christmas alone, I no longer remember the laughter first. I remember the quiet after I set down my glass. I have been married for a long time, I said. But what I was really telling them was this: I have had a full life for a long time. You simply never looked closely enough to see it. And if someone you love keeps reducing your life to a joke, ask yourself, are you protecting the relationship, or the version of you that makes the relationship easy for them? Sometimes the strongest revenge is refusing to remain available for disrespect, building a life no one can borrow without permission, and letting the truth collect every consequence you were once expected to prevent.
We hope the story was both entertaining and meaningful. All situations are fictional and created only for educational entertainment and reflection. We hope it reminds you that your peace is not a reward others get to approve. It is a right you are allowed to protect. Anyone who benefits from your pain may not understand your healing, but you can still choose it.